Joining us right now is the House Minority Whip, Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise. And Congressman, it is always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, great being with you.
Good morning to you. So let's kick it off with this threat. Look, the president has been very successful with his threats of tariffs, threats of this, that. You know, it gets people thinking, well, what is he capable of? Maybe he will, in fact, shut the border. Do you want the border closed?
Maria, I want the border secured, and it's not. Look, when you've got Jay Johnson, who I respect, he was Barack Obama's Homeland Security Secretary. He said just a few days ago that this is a crisis. He said when he was secretary, if you had 1,000 crossings in a day, that was a really bad day. Today, Secretary Nielsen wakes up some morning and sees that there were 4,000 illegal crossings in one day. This is a major crisis. We've got to get control over it. And the asylum, by the way, is out of control. And years ago, you used to have maybe 1 out of every 100 people crossing claiming asylum. Today, it's more than 1 out of every 10 people claiming asylum because catch and release, the loopholes are so bad. We need to close those loopholes, but Democrats refuse to work to get that done. So the president's got to take action, and it's a crisis, and you got to have a crisis-like response, and that's, I think, what you're seeing from the president. He wants to keep America safe. That's his primary job, and he's carrying through on it.
Well, why hasn't the Congress done anything about this? I mean, you're right. Catch and release is ridiculous. I mean, you know, people coming into the country, then they get a court date, they leave, and then they're supposed to come back. They don't come back. Now you've got people parading as families when they're not really families. They're, you know, have a whole business in terms of lending people your kids so that you look like a family. But closing the border is an aggressive step. The Journal this morning has an op-ed blowing up the border. And it says, we hope this is negotiating bluster and not a plan. It's hard to imagine a more self-destructive decision. It wouldn't solve the border asylum crisis in any event. So what do you think? Is it just bluster?
Well, I think it's a serious crisis. And again, I mean, Democrats that are denying there's a crisis at the border, they're playing politics in games with America's national security. They're human traffickers. There's drugs coming over. What you just talked about, these kids that are being abused, it's some of the most blatant forms of child abuse where they literally take a kid, bring him over with an adult because the law actually encourages that.
Yeah.
As soon as it's done, they take the kid back and they abuse him again and bring him over to bring more people in. And it's legal. Catch and release is allowing that to happen.
That's unbelievable.
It's got to end. We've passed bills out of the House to end this, and it gets over to the Senate, and Chuck Schumer and his Democrat friends block any attempt to get that through to the president's desk. So the president's made it clear what needs to be done. Secretary Nielsen's laid out the laws that are being abused to the level where kids are literally being rotated around and around and abused multiple times.
That's incredible.
And yet they won't work with us to solve this problem.
So that's what's going on. Because, yeah, I mean, they say, the Democrats always say, we are for border security, and yet they didn't vote for Kate's Law. They didn't vote for the border wall. They didn't vote for, you know, the end of sanctuary cities. So, you know, it's hard to believe it. Yeah. Look, I've got to get into another round.
What about those women, by the way, that are being sexually assaulted, too? Why don't they care to stand up for those women who are being, and everybody knows it's happening, but they won't work to stop it.
There's another round of U.S.-China trade talks beginning in Washington today. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, meeting with Chinese Vice Premier Liu He. What's your expectation in terms of a China deal? We know what the big ticket items are, the IP theft, the forced transfer of technology. Is the White House going to be able to come up with an enforcement mechanism to put in so that the Chinese do not just say they're not going to steal and then turn around and steal our IP continuing?
Well, President Trump's done a phenomenal job negotiating to try to address these serious problems, IP dumping, all of that.
Yeah.
I was with Ambassador Lighthizer and the president last week with our trade whip team, Kevin Brady and his group as well, working on USMCA. But we talked about China and the fact that at least they are getting negotiations. But the president's a tough negotiator. He knows that enforcement ultimately is going to be the most important sticking point because China has cheated on previous deals and they go around it. So you've got to make sure whatever agreement you get in place, it has to be enforceable. They're working on it. I'm encouraged they are working on it. I'd like to see it addressed. Most of our allies around the world, by the way, would also like to see this fixed and know that America is the only country that really can stand up to China with a lot of friends behind us hoping it happens.
You know, it's interesting on the Mueller probe. You know that we have followed this incredibly closely and that we have been telling the truth in terms of the perpetrators who started an investigation into Trump based on nothing. The Mueller probe, though, is front and center now for the Democrats. A House panel is going to vote today to authorize a subpoena for the special counsel's full unredacted report. Former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder says that everybody should see the report, but the Washington Examiner found that he said the opposite about the Ken Starr report that investigated Bill Clinton. Watch this.
You look at the letter and you're trying to figure out how much of this is Barr, how much of this is Mueller, how much of this is based on the Mueller findings. I think it all points to the fact that at the end of the day, Congress, the public, are going to have access to the Mueller report.
But Congressman, back in March of 1999, Holder said this, and this is a quote: "Although there is a legitimate concern that the American people have a right to know the outcome of an investigation of their highest officials, the reporting requirement goes directly against most traditions and practices of law enforcement and American ideals." So he wasn't he wasn't willing to make the Ken Starr report public, Congressman.
Neither were a lot of the Democrats who are in charge of this. Look, Marie, you know this, and the political game's going on. Do Democrats really want the report issued in violation of law with classified information being released? It was all about collusion. The whole thing started with the dossier, the tainted beginning of this, a lot of corruption within the FBI that they still haven't addressed. But it was all about collusion, and there was no collusion. And so now Democrats are in disarray. They're trying to change the subject.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe the Mueller report didn't release other stuff. No. Was there collusion or not? No. That's the clear answer. Was there obstruction, by the way? No. That's the clear answer.
Yeah, but there's
they
more
won't
to
acknowledge it.
There's more to it. You've got a cabal of individuals who investigated President Trump with no predicate. They just wanted to spy on his campaign. You know, you've got your colleagues on the left digging in now. They want to see the report, you know, in its entirety. Are you and your colleagues going to keep digging in on the fact that there should be accountability for Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and all those people who lied to Congress about the dossier and their ability to spy on a political campaign? It's pretty clear what this is: one political campaign framing another.
Absolutely, and not just accountability. They weren't just trying to spy on the campaign. They were trying to overturn the results of the 2016 election, and they said that. This was their insurance policy.
Yeah.
Who's holding those people accountable? I've called on the FBI for months now to do a thorough investigation and then hold people accountable who broke the law.
Yeah, we're going to be watching that. I know, Lindsey Graham says he's going to dig in. Congressman, you and your colleague filed a discharge petition yesterday to go around Democratic leadership and bring the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act to the House floor if it gets enough signatures. You want to tell us quickly about that?
Yeah, Maria, you know, it's crazy that we need a law to protect babies who are born alive outside the womb. This isn't even part of the abortion debate now. Ann Wagner's got a bill to give full legal protection to those babies born alive, and yet Pelosi refuses to bring it to the floor. So we've got this discharge petition. I filed it yesterday. We broke 190 signatures yesterday, which is a record for any discharge petition on day one. There's a lot of momentum behind this.
It's incredible that this is like, has to be a law. I mean, it's so obvious. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thank you.
We're always great to be with you.
Steve Scalise joining us. We'll be right back.